Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. I greet you live from the All America city of Morrisville, and once again, I apologize for the headsets as I'm working on figuring out how to get this computer working again so I can be without headsets. But today, I greet you live from the All America city of Morrisville in North Carolina, the eighth largest state in the United States of America. And there's a lot of things going on in the world. Russia is accusing Ukraine of launching a terrorist attack on Moscow after Russian forces shot down 2 drones over the capital. The war continues to escalate. Myanmar's junta pardoned Aung San Suu Kyi, a jail-former leader, for 5 of the 19 trumped-up charges against her. So Myanmar, still dealing with the threat to their democracy. France is evacuating citizens from Niger, a former colony, in the middle of a coup. Fear of anti-French sentiment since the coup occurred, and so all eyes are on Niger. America has curtailed Hungary's access to its visa waiving scheme, the electronic system for travel authorization, citing concerns over the security of Hungarian passports. Ron DeSantis promised, presidential candidate, that if elected president, he would revoke China's most favored nation trade status. That would enable all sorts of tariffs to be levied against China. We're going to talk about that. Hearings in the Capitol Hill have been taken on about UFOs, and we're reaching out to Congressman Jeff Jackson, who serves on the Space and Intelligence Committees, and also continues to navigate solutions from the Congress on AI. And China's economy continues to show challenges for growth. They're announcing more measures to spur economic growth. They're trying to expand a program that makes it easier for companies to borrow money. And the figure of the day to share with all of you is 30%. This is the proportion of Britain's foreign aid budget that's spent domestically, mostly on housing, asylum seekers, and hotels. So Britain's economy is not doing well at all. We're going to go ahead and get started. Lots of things going on in the world, and I have with me Mark Lee.
How you doing? Glad to be here and all of that. We've got Lee Newton Rhodes with us as well. We've also got Nick Palveda, and of course we've got Debbie Peterson, who has joined us as well. So we'll see what all folks are interested in. It looks like Nick has bounced, so he might be coming back later on at some point or another. But definitely some interesting stories that you were talking about, and I'm sure that folks have some insights into a variety of them. The one that caught my ear, and I know that Nick's always interested in different things as well. And of course, we've got Jatovi with us as well. So definitely know that Debbie has been busy over there in California. So things are probably keeping really active over there in that side of the world and everything. So Debbie, how's the heat going over there? Because I know one thing, it's hot as all get out, even though we did have some rain here yesterday. So it might have cooled it down. And I think that there's supposed to be a tropical depression that is forming off of Florida, and that may be sending some weather that'll cool the weather down, but that'll only probably be a temporary release. Since I think that definitely Steve had brought up that last month, the month of July, I think it was one of the hottest in all recorded time or something like that. So it's definitely been a scorcher around the world, and not just here in North Carolina, but in California, Europe, Asia, a number of other places. So how's the weather going over there in California, Debbie?
It's not too bad. We're used to hot weather in the summer. I wouldn't say it's anything out of the ordinary. It's pretty much the usual, and we're enjoying it, especially down at the beach. And I have to say, as far as UFOs are concerned, I was speaking with a friend of mine who's oh, maybe 8 years older than I am. He's in his 70s, and he's retired Air Force. And he tells me that Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is really quite close to where I am, I can see the rocket launches from my house, from my balcony. I have a 3-story house, so from 2 different balconies, I can see the rockets launch. And he tells me that, especially in the 60s and 70s, we were very, very active with UFOs. And of course, we do have someone from Vandenberg testifying to seeing some football field-sized UFOs hovering. And in fact, one, I guess, apparently threatening some of the guards. So, the UFO was acting in a threatening manner. So there you go. And that was more recent, I guess. I haven't seen any yet. I've seen threatened things, but not UFOs. They're real things, real people.
Yeah, I've seen some. I mean, I haven't seen any as well, but I have had friends that have told me they have seen them. I've even had some friends that have claimed that they have been abducted as well. Now, I was not there and all in that space, so whether they were or weren't, and some of them said that they were abducted by friendly folks. So I have not been there to actually get into that conversation. I don't know that I would want to be in that conversation. But Lee, what is your thoughts? Any UFOs floating around New York, or do you have any friends that have claimed to be abducted or anything in that space? Or is UFOs just something that we don't need to have the government investigate in the first place? Because it does seem like a lot of money to be going into investigating something that may or may not be real. So what is your thoughts around
I just
UFOs?
think it's a whole big distraction from the important issues of the day.
Could be,
There are people who are homeless, people who are starving, the economy, fill in the blank. But aliens and UFOs, it's not on my radar.
It's not on your radar. There are a lot of important things that are going on in that space and everything. Hey, Jacoby, have you met anybody that has claimed to be into that space, or that has claimed to be in the space of being abducted or taken away? And to Lee's point, is it something that we need to not be concerned about? Or maybe they're going to solve our problems, because like I said, there are a number of problems, and maybe they're bringing solutions, but who knows? What is your thoughts, Jacoby?
Well, since Lee has already started with the puns with it's not on his radar, I'll go with the easy one of nope.
Nope.
Did we get it? The movie, the Nope movie about well, Nope was about aliens abductions. So
I missed that one. Sorry, Jacoby.
I saw that.
You're not on the same page on this one. I think I'm too old.
Yeah, I think I missed that one as well. So definitely, but there are a number of important issues that are going on, Steve, and then we'll get to the important things as well. Have you seen or heard anybody either in West Virginia or here in North Carolina that has been dealing with the UFOs and the space of UFOs and them taking folks? Or maybe, like I said, maybe they're bringing the solutions. We've got a whole presidential race, so maybe they're bringing a younger president to us and everything.
Well,
if you know the old
and that's a great segue.
To our leader.
That's a great segue in the presidential race. We haven't talked a lot about how it's shaping up, but I think that it's been talked about in the past that aliens might have been involved with the Egyptian pyramids and many of the wonders of the world that we see. And even if you watch sci-fi movies, it's almost like they've been coming down for thousands of years. So many of the things that are unexplained, I don't know. I mean, like, I agree with Lee. There's so many other things going on in the world. Of course, we watched the movie Independence Day. Maybe they see us fighting against each other so much, and the world is not what it used to be. So it might be a good time to come in the U.S. and take our resources, or to come in the world and take our resources. But if there are aliens and they're visiting, maybe they're learning about us. Maybe they've been communicating with us and we don't know. And speaking of presidential race, Donald Trump still with a commanding lead against all the Republicans, about 30% lead right now in the primaries, amidst even federal charges. So we don't know what this means for the presidential race. Will it be a Joe Biden, Donald Trump rematch? What does that mean for Democrats? I think that that's bad for Republicans. I think that if Donald Trump is the nominee, I think you're going to start seeing a Republican Party that has what I call Trump fatigue, and they may not turn out. And would guarantee Joe Biden election, which has many Americans concerned. Every day, the president appears to be getting weaker and weaker and showing signs of his age. And of course, the recent news of Hunter Biden and the rejection of the plea deal, I think, would not do anything to help the president's mental health, because he already lost one son, and now they're just it's so bad how mean politics is, but they're doing everything they can to destroy Hunter, even though he put himself in this situation. But I would be sad to see Joe Biden, have a stroke or an aneurysm. But with this kind of stress, when you see your own child beaten up like this every day, it's got to be taking its toll on the Bidens.
Yeah, it's definitely got to be taking its toll, and I'd be interested to hear what other folks have got to say about that, the health of Biden and all. But before we get to that, I did have a quick question for you, Steve, and everything. But there is a phenomenon, let's say somewhat of a phenomenon, that is going on in that world and of the presidential races. But we have not one, not two, but three Indian candidates that are running for president, because we just had the third one that announced 2 days ago, Harsh Vardhan Singh. So what is it about the Republican Party and the Indian community that has got them throwing their hats into the ring? Any thoughts about this? Because we've got Nikki Haley, who has Indian descent. We've got Vivek Ramaswamy, and now we have Harsh Vardhan Singh, and I think that he is a entrepreneur as well, and an engineer, and I'm not sure of the rest of his background, but I do know that on July 28th, he said, hey, I want to get in this race as well. So what is your thoughts as to why we are seeing this phenomenon going on? Because I don't think there's ever been this many Indians that have run for president of the United States.
Well, I think Indian Americans have done quite well in the United States of America. When you look at the income, they're actually between probably the top 0.5% of income in the United States. Also really highly educated. So the community has done very well, whether they serve as doctors, lawyers, engineers, STEM, but now they're branching into different careers, politics, with, Nikki Haley being the prime example, former governor of South Carolina, UN ambassador, Ramaswamy, a business executive, and I don't know much about Mr. Singh. So I think it's only normal when a community does that well. Now, we had Bobby Jindal, who was the governor of Louisiana, presidential candidate. He kind of fizzled out. I think the other thing to realize is that, and I've been telling the Democratic Party this for years in North Carolina, but they just don't listen to me. There's an assumption oftentimes that all people of color are just of one political persuasion. I can tell you, as a son of immigrants from India, I am probably the only Democrat in my family. My father is a conservative Republican. My mom may be an independent. I'm married into a Republican family. My wife is now an independent. And many, many Indian Americans are fiscally conservative and socially more moderate, definitely not socially liberal. So, and it's an unspoken thing. This isn't something that they talk about in public. But I know that there are Indian Americans that cast a ballot for Donald Trump because they believed that Joe Biden and the left of the Democratic Party was just too much for them to handle. And so, Mark, I think that it's not an irony that many of these Indians are Republicans. They're not Trump Republicans. But you got to understand, when my daughter debates with her grandfather, my daughter is a progressive liberal, almost as liberal as AOC, and she's a progressive, a rising senior at UNC. She'll always ask her grandfather, why are you a Republican? I don't understand it. Republicans are so mean and bad. And he says, because I came to this country with $5, and the government of India gave me another $3. And so I had $8, and I had to become a doctor with a wife and a newborn son. And I had to make it with my own merit. And I came from a socialist country where the government was handing out money, and that didn't work so well for India. And so I don't believe it's the right thing. And so this is a classic Indian American kind of perspective from the 60s and 70s. Now, Donald Trump is kind of, anyway, so it's a long answer to your question, but I think that there's many Democrats today in North Carolina that just assume that every Indian American is a Democrat. And it's just simply wrong. It's not. It's completely inaccurate. But they refuse to listen, and so they just assume that all people of color are Democrats. So everyone's going to come and vote. And that doesn't, and Indians, they don't tell how they're going to vote. So, I bet you a third of Indians today, or maybe not a third, are going to silently go in and vote for Trump. Or maybe they won't vote, right?
Steve, isn't that a danger of stereotyping any class of people?
Yeah.
Whether it's race or religion or gender?
Mhm.
There is. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that Donald Trump has stood for that many Indian Americans don't like. The hateful rhetoric, saying immigrants are scumbags, saying that all immigrants are terrorists and murderers and rapists, and conducting yourself in a manner that's not dignified and not professional. But I think it's offensive to just assume that somebody is going to be of all political beliefs just because. Now, I know Jacoby is a Democrat, but I can't make assumptions about Jacoby or even Mark Lee because they're Black men. They're hardworking men. They're successful in their own right. There may be conservative beliefs deep down in their heart that they don't talk about, not Trump conservatism. There's conservative beliefs I have in my heart that I don't talk about in public. I can count on my hand how many days I've had off in 4 years. I work 12 hours to 13 hours a day, and I've done it since I was 10 years old. Now I'm my father's oldest son, and I modeled my life like after him. I think I might have suffered some mental damage in terms of not being able to relax on vacations and driving my wife crazy, because the older I get, the harder I work. And I'm almost retired, and it's like, why am I working? Well, I don't know any other way. But it's that mentality, right? That it's within your heart. And so, Lee, to answer your question, I think that it's we should not generalize across the board. We should focus on the issues and our own experiences, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of generalizing and all in that kind of space, I'm actually going to bring up something that Mr. Singh brought up, and I'm sure the network heads will love this issue that I'm getting ready to bring up and all in that space. But he is a fairly young man because he is 38 years old. But he did say that when he announced back on last Thursday that he was the only pure blood candidate for president because he never gave in to the COVID vaccination. So apparently he is one that is not in favor of the vaccination. And in the video, he described himself as an American first constitutional carry and pro-life conservative who helped restore the conservative wing of New Jersey's Republican Party started in 2017. So apparently he's out of your neck of the woods, Lee, and all in that place. And he additionally took a firm stance against schools endangering children. His quote, not mine, he said, "There is an all-out attack on American family values, parental rights, and the marketplace of ideas and open debate. We need strong leadership to reverse the changes that have occurred in the past few years and restore American values. That is why I have decided to seek the Republican Party's nomination for the 2024 election for the office of President of the United States." And he was a former supporter of Trump and all in that. But the question I was going to ask to Lee is definitely that's something that you brought up as well, this whole notion of the lockdowns and whether the lockdowns were harmful and things in that space. So is that going to be something that is going to be a issue that we're going to hear in the political debate, and will it resonate with a lot of folks? Because a lot of folks were not pleased about taking their kids out of school. A lot of people were not pleased with the masks, and there are still people that are not pleased with what was going on with the vaccinations and all in that space. So is this going to be a political strategy that will work?
In the general election, if Trump is the candidate, he's going to be accused, and rightfully so, blamed for a lot of the bad that went on, policies that did not work, that took place during his presidency, whether it's the social distancing, whether it's the masking, whether it's closing down, what have you, whether it's vaccines, anything negative that took place under his when he was there, he's going to be blamed for it. He's going to have to answer for it. I don't know why the candidates now that are running against him aren't pushing back against that. He owns that. He did. There was a lot that went on. And just real quickly on Steve, in terms of critical thinking and being monolithic of any group, there's an interesting interview y'all should watch on Tucker Carlson with Ice-T, where he feels he's being isolated now because his critical thinking, he's not doing the right thing. So he's not being invited back to shows and stuff that he used to be invited onto. But he wants to be his own man, as he should. It's a worthwhile interview. It's not that long.
Yeah, I'll see if I can't find that and track it down and things along those lines. Maybe we'll even get it played here as well, depending on how long it is in that way. So definitely that's some thoughts that I was wondering about. Debbie and Jacoby, what is your thoughts around this? Because I do think that those are some issues that people may be thinking about, but I was just wondering what your thoughts are, is that whether there's going to be turning point issues and all in that space. So definitely any thoughts on that? And I see we've got Shaq as well, so I'm going to bring him in and all in that kind of way. But definitely, what are your thoughts about the notion of these issues being important, including the policies that were instituted around the COVID attack that took place for the last 2 or 3 years?
Well, I think it is true that presidents get blamed for what happens during their regimes, and that's frankly kind of silly, because a lot of times it has nothing to do with them. They inherit a lot, and it's never a president's fault that we have COVID, but they are responsible for how they handle things. And I wanted to go back to what Steve said about his thinking that the Indian population, the Indian American population, probably is 30, and then we don't know about the other 10 in terms of whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat. And that's how it is in my county in California. And I don't know how similar our makeup is, our demographics are to yours where you are, Steve. But I'm thinking we pretty much have 3 different segments of the population now, and that pretty much follows suit from what I'm seeing. What I would suggest is that it might help us as Americans to look at what's happened around the world and how other countries have handled the whole COVID situation, and which countries are the countries where they've had fewer deaths, which ones have done it well, which ones implemented policies, which ones succeeded, what we can learn from other people. And the countries that were run by women had recorded 40% fewer deaths. Now that was fairly early on in COVID, and I haven't seen anything on what's happened at this stage. But that would be an interesting thing to look at if we care about people dying in our population.
Yes, and we have Shaq with us. Shaq, what's on your mind today? Please.
No, well, I'm just listening to the conversation about how Indians vote, and I've been saying that for years now. We're not all the same, and I don't know why there's this insistence that we are. We have different castes, we have different experiences, and Indians come from different parts of India as well as different parts of the world. So why we all get lumped in as if we're the same people, I don't understand. But I say that as well about white people. Why are all white people lumped in together? Croatians and Serbians don't get along. Irish Catholics and Irish Protestants don't get along. Well, why are we doing this? Why are we reducing people down to skin color? I just don't get it. But every time I say that, I get told that I'm being racist. So I don't understand. I don't know what I'm missing with this whole argument. But back to the election, look, I think Donald Trump's going to have some explaining to do, but I think that he's probably going to work out okay, because we're now finding out that some of the information that was going around during COVID was incorrect. And people are saying pretty much what you guys were just talking about aliens before. People were ridiculed, and people were locked up in psych wards for saying that aliens exist. Now, all of a sudden, it comes out that not only does the government know that there is biological material that they have found that's not human, but they've known about this for decades. And we're all just sitting there going, oh, well, no big deal. What do you mean it's no big deal? We've been making movies about it and talking about this for hundreds of years. This is a really big deal. And I'd say it's the same thing with COVID. I still have to say that the fact that I asked a question on a previous show where I said, what is somebody supposed to do if we're being told that our social media posts are going to be taken down if we don't follow CDC guidelines, but we're sitting in Australia and the state health minister and the federal health minister are telling us 2 different things, and it's somebody like myself who wants to travel to the United States, what advice do I listen to? And for having asked that question, this network was taken offline by YouTube. Now, and now a couple of years later, and I say, why are we letting the big tech companies censor our speech like that? And it seems to be met with some level of dismissiveness. I don't understand why. This is going to be a real problem, and I think that these are the sorts of issues that are going to be talked about in the elections. And, we're going to have to come up with, not just in America, you guys, but around the world, we're going to have to come up with what exactly we want to see in the future. Do we want to see free speech, even if we don't agree with it? Do we want to allow people to explore topics that may not be true? Or do we want to restrict people to carefully government-vetted information? Do we want to allow people to make their own healthcare decisions and do their own research? Or do we want to make sure that government gets to make all those decisions for us? What exactly is it that we want? And so for myself, I don't really classify myself as being a left-wing progressive. I'm certainly not one of those. But, the old classic liberalism of, small government, you let me have my freedom of speech, let me have my freedom of religion, let me have my freedom of thought, let me do what I want to do. I thought that was at the core of American, the American ideals. And I feel that, unfortunately, the United States is drifting very far away from those ideals on both.
Shaquille, you're not comfortable with the government being the arbiter of truth? And with no dissension?
I'm not comfortable with the government being the arbiter of anything. And no offense to the politicians that are here, but I mean, have you ever read? Like, just take one of the pieces of legislation in any state or federal, Congress, and just read the thing, and just read how these people have written it. Under subsection 2, subsection IB, that makes reference to regulations and a difference. I mean, it's absurd. You've got a tax code that's 1,400 pages long with 70,000 pages of explanations. The Bible's not even that big. The Bible's around 1,500 pages. So, I mean, if you take all the Abrahamic religions and you take the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran, you're talking what, 3,000 or 4,000 pages? That's to run everything in your life according to the main theocratic religions. But of course, the American government, 70,000 pages worth of tax regulations, and just recently they were asked, how many laws does the U.S. government actually have? Well, guess what? The U.S. government can't tell you because they've lost count. They're not sure. But if you don't know the law, ignorance of the law is no defense. I mean, this is terrible. And the United States, you're supposed to be the world leader. Let's get it together, guys.
Shaquille, would you be in favor of all laws being sunset after a certain period of time and they have to be re-voted on again?
I think so. And I would also say that any time that a law is it's attempted to be passed through the Parliament or through the Congress in the United States, it should be read line by line. It's not good enough for politicians to say, my advisors and my staff are going to go back and write it and negotiate with the lobbyists, and then it's just going to simply come onto the floor and all in favour say aye and all opposed say no. The whole purpose behind having parliamentary debates, and especially Senate debates, is to actually talk about the application of this law. I think the government that doesn't do that, when the legislature doesn't do that, and then palms it off to the judiciary to try to work out and decipher these laws, that is a complete abuse of the service. If those people that sit in Congress were employees of your company and produced results like this, you'd fire them immediately. And that's probably what should happen.
Hey, Shaquille, along those same lines.
On the same page today.
Along those same lines and everything, there. I was talking about Hirsch Singh, who is of Indian descent and running for president, but he comes from the entrepreneurial background. So, does we need more business people to run politics, or are there enough business people in Congress? Because I know there are a lot of lawyers, and I think there are some business folks that are entrepreneurs that are in Congress and definitely have been past presidents and all along those lines. But is that something we need more of? Because he definitely comes from that entrepreneurial background and everything. Because I think that his parents are Indian immigrants. He's from Atlantic City down there in Lee's area, and definitely was involved in helping his family. Sounds like Steve run their family business and was definitely involved on all of those kind of lines. But he was an aerospace engineer and definitely comes from that business entrepreneurial kind of side of things. So do we need more entrepreneurs in office? Anybody?
Well, I'll say this as somebody who's run and been involved in quite a few different businesses. I think one of the problems that you have with successful people is that they rarely talk about what actually led to their success or the challenges that they had. And oftentimes it's because of government regulations. That's why I've said, and I'm not saying it to be like joking around and just trying to be funny, I cannot imagine me ever wanting to take an American green card, because it would be terrible for me. It would just make a complete mess of my whole international taxation situation. It would add an added layer of complexity that would just, destroy things. But people don't want to hear that. I think really what you need to be looking for is the best people for these jobs. I know you have top of ballot voting for the president. Why don't you have top of ballot voting for all the other positions? The person who's in charge of the healthcare system, why is that a politician? Why isn't that a doctor? The people that are in charge of the education system, surely they should be qualified teachers, not qualified lawyers. And again, that goes on both sides of politics, that you see people that have no experience in the portfolios that they're supposed to be managing, no real experience in those areas, and they're running these things. It doesn't make any sense. So entrepreneurs and business people are great, but remember, small business interests is totally different to large business interests. And I know that, as a Chamber of Commerce, we deal with a lot of small to medium businesses. The things that they need is lower regulations. Our big corporations, they want the extra regulations because that complexity helps them to keep competition out. So, we need to make sure that we have a balanced approach, and that there is actually representation from a wide group of people. And again, as a country, you have to decide, what do you want? Do you want to have a thriving small and middle-sized business environment, or do you want to have an environment where it's basically just government and big corporations? What do you prefer?
Well, I think the reality is that much of our economy runs on small businesses. And so we need a good representation there. And having always owned my own businesses in the UK and here in the United States, and done well with that, I am very much in favor of business people being involved. I, however, would put a caveat on that, and I really agree with you, Shaquille. I think that's brilliant, that it needs to be the right person for the job. And more than that, and it's something that we can usually judge at the local level, it needs to be someone with integrity. It needs to be someone who runs for office because they want to serve, not because they want to serve themselves, because they want to serve the community. And if we have people who want to serve the community, are qualified for the job, and have those skills and abilities that business people have to read a bottom line, understand cash flow, can read a budget, and can call it when it's BS, I think that's a very constructive thing. One of the issues with business people is that we're used to being autocrats. We're not used to being Democrats. We're used to saying, get it done and get it done now. And if you don't do it right, you're out. And that works well in business, and it's good for business, but it's not the way we run democracies, and it drives business people crazy. So there are two issues. One is if we're running to serve ourselves, then we are not going to be serving the people we serve. We'll be serving ourselves. And number two, business people need to be very clear on the fact that running a democracy is very different than running their own business.
I'm sorry, Debbie.
Can I say, though, that some of the issues that I see with small businesses, and I'm going to use an example that is something that we have in Australia and something that you guys have in the United States, although you call it something a little bit different. So we have a program called salary sacrificing. That allows employees to take some of their remuneration before tax. And so they can spend that on, their children's education, or maybe it's for their motor vehicle expenses, or anything like that. They can actually take that money before tax. Very commonly, this is something that's offered to government employees of big charities, and employees of major corporations. Mm-hmm. But it's not something that a small business owner is able to pass on. Why? If this is a good idea, if allowing people to take some of their expenses out of their pre-tax income, if that is a good idea, why is it not available to everybody? And I think that what you're saying is the unions come in and negotiate very hard for these sorts of benefits to apply to their union members. Fair enough. That's their job, is to try to fight for their workers. You're seeing that happen with government employees, because again, there's entrenched power there, and there's the ability to talk to government, and big corporations are able to negotiate with government. But small businesses, if you run a sandwich shop or a cafe or something, and you've got 5 part-time employees, what's your ability to deal with government? And yeah, that applies to things like Social Security. It applies to things like health insurance in the United States, and whether or not you can negotiate that. I know there's been some changes to that lately, but whether or not you can negotiate that, on the same sort of scale by combining with other small businesses the way that corporations do. There's a lot of things that hold small businesses back, and I don't think that they get listened to very much. And when they do say something, they can often be like, well, you're not doing so badly. You're doing okay. So just suck it up. And that, I think, is where some of the problem is. So you're right, Debbie, that there is that problem of them wanting to just run things their own way. But there's also the problem, I think, where they get very, very tired of having to try to navigate through this myriad of different rules. And the last thing I'll say is somebody who's worked in tax, I know of very, very few people that run their own small business that have actually got their taxes correct. And I'm yet to ever hear of a story where somebody rings me from America or somebody rings me from Australia or the UK and says, I submitted my tax return and the tax office called me and said, look, I'm really sorry, you've made a mistake. You've paid us too much. Never heard of anybody getting that phone call, but they seem to get the phone call the other way around. So that speaks volumes.
Let me throw in my 2 cents here. I mean, I think it's absolutely important, and I leverage on this my own as I'm trying to figure out my next step in politics. But I truly believe that it's very important to have entrepreneurs in state, local government offices, and even national office. And one of the primary reasons is that, and I've cited him so many times because he's such a close friend, is John Chambers, who ran Cisco, who truly believes that 40% of all jobs that we know of today are going to be automated away in the next 10 years. Now, John is saying that could be within the next 5 or 2 years. And so if that's the case, the only opportunity is creating new jobs, and many of them are going to be in startups. And so the key to the future of any economy is how we're going to create those jobs. But we need to have people that come in office, particularly in Congress and the Senate, and even the presidency, I think, that understand how to create this opportunity of startups, small businesses. For every startup we create in North Carolina, in America, we create about 6 jobs. So, you could replicate that in significant numbers. Even Prime Minister Modi in India created a new mobile app called Aadhaar. And now Aadhaar, in the rural areas of the state, they're able to create a bank account and transfer money. For many, many years in India, you couldn't do that. So every day, because of this platform, they're able to create 10 million new businesses, and every business is hiring 2 people. So every day in India, give me 1 second, let me finish. That's 20 million businesses a day, okay? The second thing I'll say, I'll end with this, is creating a culture of continuous innovation. So entrepreneurs that are successful, and I would have to say John Chambers was successful at Cisco, is creating a culture where people want to innovate. They want to bring in new ideas. And I think it really would be nice to have someone in the White House that could set that tone. So, it's just we don't see these entrepreneurs coming in and wanting to run the country. So sorry, Shaquille.
Well, just, before we hate too much praise on India, I mean, it's the government, his and previous, that have prevented the people from having access to banking services. So the fact that he's now allowing them to have access is no great, there's no great congratulatory benefit there that I can see. But I just want to come back to what you've said. Look, I look at left and right politics in the Five Eyes nations because they're the ones that I'm the closest to. And it rather seems to me that what we end up having is a scenario where government gets involved generally on the left. So the Labor Party, the Democrats will come in and they'll say, look, we want to have startup. We're going to fund it. We're going to support these. We're going to create some incentives for you to come to our country or to our state. And they generally do a very good job of attracting those. And they generally do a very good job of providing the services that you need, such as education and good healthcare and all the infrastructure that you actually need. So they do a pretty good job of that. Centre-right political parties, the Liberal Party of Australia, the Conservatives in Canada and the Tories in the UK, and of course Republicans over there, tend to say, well, we're going to do it by just lowering regulations. But the thing is that what's missing from that thing is that you kind of need both. And you need to have the right kind of relationship, because if you don't, what you have is, like, if you take nationally what's happening in the US, you see a lot of startups starting up in California, and then when they get bigger, they move to Texas and Florida. Okay, that's not always the case, but that's what the media is talking about at the moment as happening. So you don't want to see that happen with countries. And that's what you're seeing a lot of, is you're seeing a lot of people that are going to countries to get that initial startup, and then they offshore and they move their companies to Ireland or to the Netherlands or to Dubai or to all these other places where they can keep more of the profits. And very little of it actually ends up staying within the country to build more jobs. So it's not really a left-right issue. It's about getting it correct. I don't think it's just about creating the right environment. It's about creating the right environment to keep people there. It seems to me that we often see people that on their pathway to success, there's a certain level of success where they're held up as being, oh, look at how fantastic these people are. Look at this great business idea that they've got. This is fantastic. But then when they get over this sort of threshold and they become too successful, all of a sudden they're like the pariah of society. And you know, they're not paying enough, and they've gotten rich because of you, and you know, that sort of stuff. And that's not how you want to be. You want to be encouraging them. I feel like we're not doing that anymore.
Speaking of
I
encouraging,
was a product of the Thatcher era in the UK, and Thatcher was pretty far right, and but her father was a shop owner, and a grocery store, a little grocery store, and they lived above the shop, and so she really understood the importance of small business, and they really the state really helped people set up their own businesses. And once I was successful with my business, I was able to help other small businesses. I worked as a consultant for development agencies all over the UK, and they really did it right. The right did it right, because I think they did reduce regulations, but they also did a lot of training. And the reason, it worked because they trained people who got the jobs, and those people were paying taxes. The businesses were paying taxes, and it's interesting because ultimately I employed about 95 people in London and in Glasgow, and owned several companies. And the interesting thing is, I left for three reasons. One was the weather. I couldn't stand the rain another minute. I needed some sunshine. The other was I did not want to raise my son I didn't want to raise him in the class system. I didn't want to send him to a private school, and I couldn't send him to the public schools because they weren't very good where we were. And once he got to high school, junior high and high school, and he was an only child. I wanted him to be nearer family. So we moved back to the States. But the other reason was, from a business point of view, our property taxes became so high that we just couldn't survive in business anymore. So it was the regulation that eventually, and the class system, that drove us out.
hey, Debbie,
Yeah,
just
and
really
Debbie, you raise a very interesting point about property taxes, because somebody like me always talks about indirect taxation as being a positive thing to do. But we do have to be careful, because lots of places have replaced things like income tax and sales tax with exorbitantly high poll taxes, property taxes, and things like that. And that doesn't work either. But I think, again, there's a general sense of fairness. And most people that I know, very wealthy people, they don't want to not pay anything in tax. That's not what they're trying to achieve most of the time. But they just feel like, hey, am I really supposed to be paying half my income in tax? And then when you go and have a look at what the government says, again, on both sides of politics, they'll say, well, your effective tax rate is this after you take your deductions and this and that. You go, well, if that's what you're expecting me to pay, that means I have to use the loopholes. And I don't want to. I just want to be able to fill out a one-page document. Here's what I earned. Here's my deductions. Bang! It should be done. It should be a really simple thing. And if it's not, then I'm going to employ lawyers because I want to make sure that I comply with it. I'm going to employ accountants, and I'm going to pay good money for them because I want to make sure that I comply with the rules. And then they're going to look at me and say, what you need to do is you need to change your structure to this and this. And the government ends up knocking the money that they're supposed to get, and everybody hates it. The people that are struggling to survive look at the people that are a bit wealthier and say they're not contributing enough. The people that are really wealthy are sick and tired of jumping through the hoops and saying they just want to, the poorer people just want to steal my money. And you end up in an absurd situation that Australia and the US are in right now, where the United States is the lowest amongst the OECD countries when it comes to tax. They take 25% off the GDP in taxes. And Australia sits at 27%, and both Australians and the US both feel like they are the most heavily taxed people in the OECD. How does that work? Right? And it's just because people don't feel that the tax code is fair. And that's the thing when it comes to business, when it comes to taxes, when it comes to everything. People generally won't avoid it if they feel like they're being treated fairly. And to me, I think that people in similar economic positions should be contributing similar amounts to the system.
Hey, Debbie, just really quickly, I had the pleasure yesterday of interviewing Sandar Akhmadov. He is a Russian entrepreneur. He has a company called Jafton, and he was definitely talking about a number of things similar to what we're talking about, because he is a very young entrepreneur. I think he's like in his mid-20s or something along those lines, and he is the youngest member of the Forbes Business Council. But one thing that he was talking about was tech and the importance of tech, and how tech is definitely driving us away from certain jobs. So tech has taken a number of jobs, but he was also saying that that it will create a lot of jobs. And I can understand where he is going from that, and that people will need to be retrained in these new fields and all in that space. But I don't know that folks say in their 60s, which is where I'm at in the age range, or even those people in their 80s, like my parents and everything, will necessarily want to get retrained. I can see that for a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old, but what is everybody's thoughts are on the panel about that? Because he was basically saying that, yes, the technology, AI, and a number of other things are taking these jobs and creating new jobs, and that, you just got to jump on the bandwagon is basically what he's saying. Get on that train before the train runs you over, and learn these new skills and everything. I can see that working for younger people, but I don't know that it's going to work for the older folks that are out there. So what is your thoughts around that?
Well, what I see is
Well, I
that
think-
friends of mine who started in IT when they were younger moved into positions of more mentorship. They moved into HR as they got older, when they were with some of the larger, or even some of the startup companies that grew. And I think, once you get to be past 40, it does become more difficult. And then their wisdom, then it's the wisdom that becomes of value.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Joe,
think, well, go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve.
I think it's incredibly important to understand that we're seeing an unprecedented acceleration of technological innovation that's occurring. And this is, while it's displacing the traditional jobs we know of, there's a tremendous opportunity to create new jobs, upgrading with new skills. Now, the community colleges in our country, the United States, are doing a tremendous job. You can actually graduate from high school and not go to college, get into community college, get training in areas like AI, cybersecurity, data science, analytics, and even vocational jobs. There's also an apprenticeship program in manufacturing, where there's a high school kid I ran into at a manufacturing company in Morrisville. It's making $120,000 a year operating the software that manages the robot on the shop floor. And this was a kid that couldn't make it to college because he didn't have the wherewithal. So this could even happen when you lose a job. So I think we're going to have to see an educational system that's more flexible to the ever-changing needs of an economy. And I think it's a great opportunity, but it's going to really require a shift in the mindset that not every American will be able to go to college and do the traditional, I'm going to go to college and get a job and be at IBM or a big company for 20, 30 years. I think those days are pretty much gone. And that's where
I don't think people want to do that either, Steve. Really, I mean, who wants to? Who young today wants to do what their parents or grandparents did? Graduate high school, go work for the same company for 30 or 40 years, and then retire. I mean, then what? Then go and knit in front of your old TV. I mean, nobody wants to do that these days.
I'd love to do that. I'd like to. Well, I hate knitting, but I'm
yeah, but you're only just a little bit over 30 now, Debbie. I'm talking about the young ones. Yeah, they're younger than you and I.
Yeah, well, why don't you say fishing? Then you got some customers.
Go
But I do want to say, everyone talks about the technological advances that we're experiencing, and they say it's unprecedented, like you just said, Steve. I go, no, really, we don't know. I mean, we always think it's like young people when they come home from school, they think they invented it. No, we've been doing it for centuries. Look at what happened when we got rid of the printing press. Look at what happened when the printing press itself was invented. I mean, there was these big essays saying, look, there's going to be anybody will be able to write a book, and they'll be able to contaminate the minds of our young people. And today we have libraries, and now we've got the internet. I mean, I don't think it's too much of a worry. I think people are too scared about the future and what the ramifications are going to be. And is IT going to take over the world? And is IT going to displace everything? Sasha Starr and I, Sasha may still be able to beat the computer systems, but one day they'll be even too good for Sasha. But that doesn't mean that people are going to stop playing chess. And I'm sure that Sasha's going to enjoy playing a game of chess with me over a glass of vodka instead of playing with a computer. So, as I said, I think there's lots of things that are out there in life that computers are not going to displace us in. My real fear is that if we allow too many jobs to go overseas to countries with cheaper labor, what you'll be left with is the service industry and the trades. But I think we'll be okay. We just need to make sure that we prioritize the right things in our society. But don't stress too much. I'll just say to young people watching as well, don't listen to your parents, don't listen to your school. You don't need to get the top marks right now and then go straight to university. You've got mature age pathways. I know that 24 might seem like a really old age at your age if you're young, but it'll go really quickly. So go and explore the world. Go do some other stuff first if you're not ready to go to college yet.
Sasha
Speaking of
Stars,
explosions,
let's
hold on
get
a
a quick
second.
update on Ukraine, Russia from Sasha real
We
quick.
got, definitely a quick update, and I was actually going to play that video. I know we got actually Sasha show Russia, Ukraine, and China coming up at about another 10, 15 minutes. So I was going to play Lee's video and get people's comments on that. But yeah, if you want to give us a very quick update, because we do have your show coming up in about 10 minutes as well.
Well, it's difficult to do a quick update on something what is so intense, and there are so many people are dying on both sides. The best I can say that Ukrainian advance, although very slow, again, what means slow? Against one of the strongest armies in the world, with the heavy fortifications being built because of the ineptness of US and NATO to supply timely resources to Ukraine. I'm talking about military resources, weapons. Russians were able in the last several months to build incredible fortifications, second to none in the world. Mining fields, second to none. Intensity of these mines is absolutely unparalleled to anything what one visits, and that was thanks to lack of Ukraine having the systems to start their attack several months earlier. Now it's much more difficult, although it continues to go on. The general feeling is that by the end of September, early October, Ukraine has to show some advance, substantial advance to speak of. And at that point, there will be a reevaluation of what's next. Right now, it's premature to say anything, but advance continues. Every day, small pieces of territory are being taken. But for Ukraine, it's not a matter of territory. It's a matter of how many Russian soldiers are being killed every day. The number has never been less than 500 for the last several weeks. And before that, when the Russians were attacking around Bakhmut, the numbers were 1,200 a day, 1,500 a day. So that's the only measurement. You don't need territories. If you destroy enough of the enemy's army, you'll get territories by default. So don't care about whether you got 1 kilometer or 5 kilometers of your territory back. It doesn't matter. It matters how many Russian soldiers you were able to kill.
Yep, I hear you and everything. We're going to play that video really quickly before Steve wraps up and everything that was related to Ice-T and all along those lines, and the kind of notion that folks are speaking from different viewpoints and all in that space, and that we are not all monolithic in our views and everything. So let's watch this video, and then we'll hear some comments that folks may have if we've got time, which hopefully we'll have about 2 or 3 minutes after this video. So let's check out this video.
So Ice Cube is facing more sellout accusations over a controversial Tucker Carlson interview. Hey, what's up? I'm A-Dub, and check this out. So Ice Cube drove through his former stomping grounds of South Central LA with Carlson on Tuesday, July 25th, as they delved into an array of hot-button political topics, including Barack Obama's presidency, Black Lives Matter, and the COVID-19 vaccine. Ice Cube said he was proud to see Obama get elected as president of the United States in 2008, as he didn't think America would ever take that step, but his enthusiasm didn't last.
What did you think of Obama when he got elected?
You know, for the first time, I felt proud that America took that step.
Yep.
I didn't think they would ever do that. And so that was a moment in time. But then, you look around, years go by, and not much change for people I know, people I care about. At the end of the day, it's still the same results.
Carlson also asked him why he refused to take the COVID-19 vaccine while filming the movie Oh Hell No, which he subsequently quit.
Why wouldn't you take the vax? You had a direct order to take it. You were told to take it.
Yeah, I'm not real good with direct orders, but on a whole nother note,
But it was a command.
I
mean, I'm sorry, they told you. I mean, they couldn't have been clearer about
Yeah,
it.
it was pretty clear. Did you take it?
Of course not.
Yeah, no. It wasn't ready, It was 6 month, kind of rush job.
As for Black Lives Matter, Ice Cube raised questions about the sizable donations the organizations received following George Floyd's death in 2020 and the subsequent riots across the U.S. Fans were not happy to see Cube sit down with the controversial host for an interview and flocked to social media to express their disappointment at the rap veteran. Ice Cube has become the sellout black man that he always warned us about. One person wrote on Twitter. Another added, Ice Cube has lost his goddamn mind. He let Tucker Carlson guide him with loaded questions into taking shots at Obama, Black Lives Matter, and COVID vaccines, while Tucker sat there gouging him and giggling. I used to think Cube was smart, but he's dumb as hell. He let Tucker use him in a big way. Dude is lost. The interview comes shortly after Ice Cube faced similar backlash for meeting with politician Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a prominent anti-vaxxer. While Cube has yet to respond to the negative reactions over his Tucker Carlson interview, he didn't hold back when firing back at critics over his RFK Jr. photo. For all the simple-minded short bus people out there, a picture is not an endorsement, dummy. Now get your ass over to Bungalow 51 and shut the F up. But what do you think about Ice Cube having this interview with Tucker Carlson? Do you believe that he is a sellout or not really? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell to stay up to date on all of our new videos. And as always, make sure to keep it all the way locked to hiphopdx.com.
Folks,
Well,
I'm going to go ahead and close out, Mark. I've got to run, but that was really insightful. We can talk about that tomorrow.
Thank you, Mark.
We'll get some updates from Sasha about the war in Ukraine on his show today
we
at
just
11.
got that, we just got that. We're going to have the Russia, Ukraine, China show coming up in a few minutes. Just really quickly, Jacoby, any thoughts about that video? But then Steve, do your closeout. But I did want to give Jacoby at least a chance to comment on the video.
Well, I mean, we're up against the hour, and I mean, the video has a lot of context to it that would be great for everybody to get into. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of comments that I had for, the whole discussion today, as well as that video as well. But again, we're at the close of the hour, so it'd be
Joey, just real quickly, your thoughts. If you have thinking different than someone else, you're a sellout. Where does that logic come from?
that's not exactly what they're stating there. There's a lot more context to what they're talking about than what was just immediately said. So in terms of having a different mindset, that essentially doesn't make you a sellout. What does is the context behind it. So there's much more to it than just saying, hey, he disagrees with me, so I'm going to call him a sellout. That's not it. There's a lot more context to that and a lot more to get into it. And again, that's why I say it'd be great to get into the whole discussion around that for a full-blown hour.
Jacoby, when the LA Times labeled Larry Elder as the black face of white supremacy because he was running as a Republican in the Californian governor's race, do you think that there's some context which makes that sort of commentary okay?
We're at the end of the hour, and this would be.
Can we pick this up tomorrow, Mark? This would be a great topic.
Yes,
Yeah,
this would be a great topic to get into then, rather than trying to force me to give you a quick sound bite.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
We're going to go ahead and close out. We want to thank you for being a wonderful show.
Conversation tomorrow.
No major insights today. We'll be back tomorrow, and I'll be joining WPTF on Friday. I'll be sending everyone the link on that every Friday at 3 o'clock commentary. Looking forward to a wonderful show. Thank you for being with us wherever you are. Lots of change going on in the world, and we'll be getting back into bringing in some guests to talk about immigration reform, Indian Independence Day, which is coming out August 15th, and a number of other major issues to discuss. Thank you all for being with us today. And also, we're going to talk a little bit more about AI on the show because AI is changing so fast. Thank you all so much. Be safe wherever you are, and have a great week.
Do the same, and
Take care, all.
get
God
y'all
bless.
out of here. But we'll have Russia, China, and Ukraine coming up very shortly. But right now, let's get on out of here.